I am 32 years old, so Halloween is not like it used to be. Fun and exciting for me. They used to put up some decorations, and on Halloween night, I would distribute candy and spend the whole night watching horror movies. In 2022, I spent most of the morning cleaning the house and getting sweets from the supermarket to prepare for the children who would return home at night around 3 on Saturday. The door is closed, so I can hear if someone is near, and I play a movie. Our area is not big and strong, so we do not accept many children. But this year, the situation was different, except for 2 hours and no child came. I looked outside and found the entire street empty and quiet. I said, maybe Halloween is no longer a big thing like it used to be, but I was still. I hope that some children will come back. I preferred as ready as possible to come to my house at 6:30. I heard the first ring of the doorbell. I got up and grabbed the plate of sweets and found someone standing looking inside the house. He was wearing disguise and had a white mask covering everything with him. I let him go. The door was still hidden, but it was strange that he was looking like this inside the house. I walked towards the door. I told him to take some sweets from the plate, but as I saw him putting his hand on the plate, I noticed if he was alone. There was no one with him, and there was something about him that was not comfortable. He was taller than most of the children who came in, and when I approached to look into his eyes, I noticed that he looked too big for a small child. The whites of his eyes were red, and there was a black patch under his eyes. I felt that this was strange, but honestly, I didn't care strongly, especially since there was no one else who was passing by, and I didn't want to burn him, or bother him, or draw his attention to this. It could be a child who looked older than normal. When he left, I put the plate down and came back to complete the movie, except for about 15 minutes. I heard a sound like a step outside the door of the house. I thought that someone else was coming to take sweets, so I got up again. But as I was twisting my heart, he stopped when I saw someone standing inside the house. He was the same person who had come a while ago wearing a white mask. The stranger was standing at the door, but he entered my house from inside. At that time, I said to him, "Can I help you with something?" Fadl looked at me with a strange and slightly worried look, seconds before Laura returned and left the house. I stood in shock for a few seconds. Then I approached the door and saw him walking on the way out of the entrance, but he was looking behind him every now and then, as if he was checking whether I was still standing and looking at him or not. I closed the door and was very surprised that he didn't just enter my house. But why did he come again? Originally, I felt that there was no possibility that he was a young child. Surely this was a strange old man wearing disguise, and his intention was neither good nor comfortable. I did not feel safe while he was walking in the streets at night on Halloween with children around him. So I took out my phone to the police and reported him. I heard footsteps coming towards the door again, but this time there was no knock, no bell ringing, or anything. I walked on my fingertips and looked out of the magic eye to see who was standing and what was doing, as if he knew that I was approaching the door. He called out loudly, "Hello, I'm searching for my son. Have you seen him?" "Is there a limit?" There was a guy in his 40s wearing casual clothes, a brown t-shirt with long sleeves and dark jeans, but I did not trust him at all, and I was right. The man sat looking around him for a while, and then he got closer to the door. When he got closer, I saw black halos under his eyes and his eyes were red. I was worried that he was kidnapped, and Laura returned while I continued my call with the police quietly, in another room. A few minutes later, I looked at the door, but the man was gone. Police arrived a short time later and found a disguise with a white mask thrown in a tree next to the house. His figure was thrown quickly. It's clear that this was an attempt on his part. He's playing the role of someone else. Unfortunately, the police were unable to find the man tonight, but I really wish he wasn't able to do anything. His plan was evident from his strange behavior and his appearance at my house 3 times. He acted as if begging his son to do something terrifying. What happened was at the end of October. Lamis was in another university and lived in a room in a dormitory inside the university with a girl named Kelly. She was her roommate and she was a generally good girl, even if they didn't talk much. She was very social, and Lamis was a little isolated when the Halloween holiday came. Kaylee told Lamis that she would go to a party with her at one of her friends. She saw that they could have fun there and she got to meet new people as well. The party was in a real house, so they wouldn't prefer to be locked in the living room. I bought a ghost outfit. It doesn't look good at all. And at 8 o'clock, Kaylee is an Uber student who takes them to her owner's house. The house was about 10 minutes from the university dormitory, but the town itself was small and they were in a completely different area. The road was almost empty, and there was only one big house there. It had orange lights attached and tons of blown-up Halloween decorations. They entered the house and surprise. It wasn't crowded. There were about 10 or 15 people around the same age. They spent many hours playing. They drink. They dance. It was a very entertaining night. Honestly, Lamis was very happy that she left, but at 1 that night she was tired and her belt was completely exhausted. I wish Kylie had asked her if she wanted to go with her, but Kylie was very drunk and told her she was spending the night there. Lamis was not comfortable enough with anyone present to ask them to take her. Especially since all of them were drunk, most of them children, did not get out of sight, and I stood thinking, what can you do? Her time. She opened the Uber application, but honestly, she didn't want to pay $30 for a 10-minute ride. Especially since she often doesn't have $30 in her account, and she also drank a little, which made her unable to think clearly. In the other, she decided she was walking to college. She told herself that a 10-minute walk in Arabic means about 35 or 40 minutes walk, or at least that's what she remembered. She began to walk on the road, turned off the lights coming out of the house, and quickly found herself in a very dark part. She was walking narrowly under the light, and then minutes under the darkness before reaching the next pillar of light. After a while of walking, an Arab moment followed her, and this was strange because she looked like she was parked next to the road, and she was sure that she had not returned from next to the cars, but every time she kissed behind her, she would find her moving and getting closer to her. I tried to touch them and watch them, but in a moment I looked behind them. I did not see Arabic. Suddenly there was a little fog, but she didn't know. Where did she go? They can turn and come back. I continued walking, but I started to feel more uncomfortable. It felt like someone was watching her. I went back for about 5 minutes while walking on the side of the road before I heard the sound of Arab motors. It sounded behind her, and she saw an Arab coming from the midst of the fog, and its light was turned off. It was driving 11. I stood right next to it. There was a man sitting in front of it with a very light chin, and he was smiling. Strange, at that time he asked her where she was going. It's late, you're walking alone here. She told him she was fine, and continued walking. But he started walking beside her in Arabic at the same speed all the time. He said to her loudly from the Arabic window, "Come and get you? Can't you be here alone?" But his voice was in a different strange need. Lamis senses that it is not normal and she tells him no. "Thank you." I looked at him and found that the smile had disappeared from his face, and his face remained tense, and his eyes were looking at her with an aggressive look, as if he were telling her that there was no other choice but for her to ride with him. I was confused as she spoke, and suddenly I found him standing in the Arab, quickly opening the door and getting out of it, but at the same moment, another Arab light appeared from afar. Another Arab was coming. Lamis ran halfway and signaled to stop it. This frightening man quickly returned to his car, and when the second Arabic began to slow down, he quickly got out and walked in the second Arabic. One of the boys who were at the party got out. He was going home. Lamis knew what he looked like, but she didn't know his name. She told him what happened when she arrived at the university. She never got over the effect of drinking so quickly as happened when the man got out of his car. But honestly, if no one had come and helped her, she might be on the missing persons list now. It remains in any evidence of anywhere for her. It was Halloween, and I was in full class at the time. A group of my friends and I felt that this year we had become a little older than the idea that clams are sweet and that we take sweets. This was the first year we didn't go out. 10 years after celebrating Halloween the same way, we found ourselves not knowing what to do. Most of my friends decided to stay at home and have some fun or distribute sweets. But me and the closest one of them, Tamer, we thought differently. We wanted to do anything, literally anything tonight. I went to Tamer and we thought about his plan again. He got the idea that we were going to a place he had heard about, according to what we knew. This place was like an abandoned tunnel or underground manhole located in the forest a few miles south of our city. I've also heard about this place before, but neither he nor I knew many details. Tamer Kadar answers the directions of the place from one of its owners, and with the plan, we drew up. We went out on the Kaf and went to the second side of the city. There were many people walking in the streets, but there were very few Arab women. The closer we got to the forest, the number of houses was very low, and certainly the number of people was also low. We both expected that we might find children like us, coming with the same idea, but when we didn't find anyone in the area, our enthusiasm increased even more. We tied our calf around a nearby tree, and then we started walking in a small corridor that was exactly in the place that Tamer's owner told us about. This corridor was very clear that it was not a real corridor, and it was just a way of working from other people I walked in. It was mud and a lot of plants that came out randomly. It was very easy to get lost by mistake. Once we had to stop and look around to determine the location of the road. Of course, the world was oppressive and rebellious. He had one searchlight, but I was walking close to him and he illuminated the road ahead of us. I think we walked about 40 minutes until we finally came to an open area in the trees on the other side of this place. It was at the entrance of the tunnel, and it was a small opening in the side of the hill in the distance. The place was pitch black, nothing was visible. We were pretty sure it was Manga Madim Tamer near the entrance, and I was following along our searchlight, and his appearance was frankly quite terrifying. The place was very pleasant, and was just a rough rock tunnel with an endless shape. Before we entered, I found myself instinctively looking behind me at the forest we came from. For a moment I thought I saw something moving next to a unit of trees near the passage. Along, I said, Altamer shines a spotlight on this place, but when he shone the searchlight over the whole area, we didn't see anything. I didn't know if I was afraid of myself or if I actually saw anything, but being with my friend made me feel a little safer. Tamer, the light returned to the tunnel and we began to enter, hesitating. Dirt particles were flying in the beam of light and we were walking slowly. The place was very quiet and every step we took was making a terrifying echo, as if this tunnel was miles long. We did not walk far in the air before we heard something in front of us. The voice was like the voice of someone speaking, but the voice was low like a whisper, but the echo of the voice was bringing us the voice close to us to the point that we heard it. He ordered the scout to his furthest distance. He can light it up in the tunnel, but he was still in a hole with no end in the darkness. It's like we read each other's thoughts. The two of us wrapped up quickly. We started walking quickly towards the tunnel opening and we were walking far away. I was hearing voices. Behind me, they were either talking loudly or they were getting closer to us, but every time I looked back, I was completely dark. Even if it's just 5 feet away, we finally reached the tunnel. Suddenly, Tama stood up quickly. There was a strange man standing about 10 meters away, and he was in the middle of the open area as if he was coming to the side of us two embryos along the side of the trees. I didn't have the courage to look behind me to make sure if he was running after us or not. Eventually, we got tired and started to slow down. At that time, we had arrived in the general direction towards the country, and we were walking back to talk about what happened, and we thought that the man we saw outside the tunnel was probably intending to trap us inside, or at least, he prevents us from going out. I mean, why is an adult man and everyone in the forest on Halloween night exploring an abandoned place? He knew that the children would say this has no meaning. As for the people who were inside the mine, they could have been second children, or someone working with the man in the forest. We are very lucky that we retreated and cursed the place at the time we went, if we had preferred 10 seconds more. This man could have reached the entrance of the tunnel and locked us up. The only way we can get out and force us even more is to go inside the tunnel. What? Did she have to travel to another governorate other than the one she lives in because she was going to do graduate studies? Nada was working online, so he traveled with him so that she would not be left alone. But before they traveled, Nada saw such a place for rent, and the first of them was a good house that was located in an area with almost no people, and that's why it was cheap. And when Nada saw the advertisement, the house was always accessible, inspection available anytime. But Nada spoke to him and took his number from him, and they agreed that she would ring when she arrived. When they reached the city, a call rang for him, but he did not respond, so she and her husband were forced to go to his house before the date they agreed upon. The man rang, he called. She replied at the time and said to her, "Have you arrived?" His voice. It was an old man's voice and manner very slow, indicating that he was tired or in need of the wrong kind. I called back at the time and told him, "Yes, we are in front of the house now and the man is upset." He told her we are. Me and my husband in front of the house. How old are you when you said you were married? I don't like to share my private life with anyone. And what will this bother you about? Then he helps me find the housing where I will stay. I'm sorry. Sometimes people don't say because they're married, and that bothers me. I'll come to you right away. And then he hung up. Nada said to her husband, Ali, what the man said in the call, and he always understood that there was something wrong, and he wanted to walk at the time. But Nada was always convincing him that there were no other places but this, and that they might have misunderstood, and this was the most wrong decision Nada made. While they were still standing talking, they found the door. Suddenly it opened and a young man came out of the house. It looked very strange and terrifying. His eyes were as red as blood, and his hair was very long, as if he hadn't shaved in a long time. He took one look at them, and then he started running on his Arabic, and took it, and walked very quickly. At that time the matter was getting weirder, but he also didn't walk because they didn't understand anything about what was happening. They preferred China to each other, and they did not understand what exactly was happening. But along came the original king. He was an old man with very scary eyes. He approached them and said, I want to greet you, but my hands are not clean. Why? From work, he began to ask a lot of questions, and he was completely ignored, Nada's husband. And the strange thing is that he didn't even blink and start asking questions like DNTA, who will go to university again at this age? What other places can you go? Will your husband sit here with you? Or is he coming to see the place and walk? After Nada tried to answer all the questions, did her husband Love ask him too? But he looked at him a little. Then he looked at Nada again and said to her, Come to the storage room. Nada says that at this time she really feels that they have to walk. The man's manner was strange, and his appearance was even stranger, and he also ignored her husband. All of this assured her that this man was not normal, but they decided to continue with the other and walked with him to relax with the places. The first thing went to the storage room behind the house. He opened the door, and then they saw stairs leading to the place below. Darkness wasn't a solution, but he turned on a light. But there is nothing enlightened, and anyone's reaction is normal. For example, he says, the light is off. I apologize. The light is wasted or anything like that. But this strange man, all he did was work. And he continued also, and went down the ladder into darkness, and he stood beneath, and gazed upon them above. Then he said to them, Come on down. Husband Nader replied and said, There is nothing we will see. He was the light like this, so he stood under a lot in a suspicious way, and then he came out again and closed the door without saying a word. All of this was strange, but they were trying to count everything. Then he took them to the house. At that time, stranger things began to happen, such as, for example, the front door of the house closes alone, and when the nut Nada tried to open it, this deranged man shouted and told him, Don't play anything without my permission. The man was trying to lock them up in any small room, but they were running away from this too. He put his hand in his pocket a lot. The first thing they look at is getting it out quickly. In the middle of the conversation, the man said that there is a young man who is still living in the house, but his rent is over, so he will remain sitting until a new tenant comes, and then he will walk along. There was actually evidence of his words, but it was very weak evidence, meaning there were books on the desk. But they were public books. Who should read it? There was a fruit plate in it, but it was clear that it was fresh fruit, meaning it was still answered. There was also no fruit or even normal food in the refrigerator itself, and the wardrobe had 3 t-shirts in it, but at the time they did not ask him about it. What school is he going to? At that time, he did not know how to respond and sat inventing words that no one believed him. All of this except until the last situation, the man behind Nada and his wife, all the rooms in the apartment except one. When they asked him about the reason for his rejection, he began to give many reasons that were not convincing, such as that this room had not yet been painted and that it was under construction. Then he said that it was because he wanted to use it for storage, and he said many other reasons. All reasons behind each other. It was very clear that he was trying to hide something, but while they were still talking in front of the room, they smelled a very bad smell, a smell like a dead animal or thing. At that time, they said excuses very quickly and walked as fast as possible from the place, and after they left the house, the man was outside. He saw them and kept walking until he reached his carriage, and the first thing he called out was his wallet and went to the side of the house. The man came back quickly again, but Nada's husband looked at him from behind the guard and saw that he had entered the house again. At that time, he was sure that there was something wrong, and when they went, they searched for this man. The house and everything. They discovered 3 things. That this man was very well known that he was insane, that he did not have any property, and that the abandoned house and its owners all died in a strange way in 1 month and disappeared. No one knew their path. And the third piece of information was that there was someone with the same appearance as this insane man, but his name was different, wanted from a period of justice for a serial killer and a serial killer. Nada and her nut, they